And you join me on this beautiful May morning, having just come in from Douglas on the Manx Electric Railway. And now it's time for a run up the mountain. Car number 1 has been patiently awaiting our pleasure, and now it's time to board. There are currently 4 cars of the original 6 operating on the line, and they all date from 1895 when the line was opened. Whilst the Manx Electric Railway runs so closely to this one, the lines are actually completely separate, as the Mountain Railway uses 3-foot 6-inch or 1067mm gauge, whilst the Manx is 3-foot gauge. And we leave Laxey parallel to the Manx before crossing the road to head up and away up the mountain. There's a useful PA system that highlights interesting aspects of the route, and so we pause opposite the Great Laxey Wheel.
It was built in 1854 to pump water from Glenmore, which was part of the Great Laxey Mines industrial complex.
But soon we continue up the valley of the Laxey River. Now, this bucolic rural scene was, in the 19th century, a major mining complex extracting mostly lead ore, but also other ores including silver, copper and iron. There were plans made in 1888 to build a railway up the mountain, but it was in 1895 when the line was rapidly built, and from the start it was designed to be an electric railway. By the end of 1895, the line was immediately sold to the owners of the Manx Electric Railway, a somewhat dubious transaction as the Mountain Railway had the same owners. Anyway, we can now see the mountain ahead, but first we must cross the mountain road, famous for being part of the TT motorcycle course. And incidentally, during racing, trams terminate at each side of the road, and passengers then cross the road over a footbridge. And now for the big climb that will see car number 1 circumnavigate the mountain as it coils up towards the summit station. And it's at this point that most of the views are out of the left-hand side, but fear not, we'll get a look on the way down. So the car continues its roughly 270-degree loop, ensuring that it will finally approach the station from the northeast. And it's worth noting here that the cafe bar may be entitled the Summit Hotel, but I don't believe it's ever actually been a hotel.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's definitely a lot cooler up on the summit, I must say, but the view is stunning. And I'm sure the GoPro doesn't quite do it justice, but trust me, you can see a very long way. So up at the summit there's a couple of pylons, and one or two of you might remember Paul from Penzance. He's a big fan of pylons, so this is for you, Paul. I was told to look out for the fact that this very unusual pylon, the top half is actually made of wood. I've not seen that before. Have you, Paul? Down there behind the camera is Laxey, and Richard's texted me and he's on the next one up here. There's the 11 o'clock departure waiting to come down the mountain then, and we'll wave that goodbye, and then it'll be time to see Richard's tram coming up the track. In fact, there it is now. I can see it trundling along, so I'm guessing the 2 trams may cross. In fact, it's double tracked, isn't it? So they'll be passing somewhere on the summit. And then off goes car number 1 on its way back down the mountain. Incidentally, there is no road access here, so the cafe is entirely provisioned by the railway. And also the Civil Aviation Authority that manage the masts themselves, they have a little diesel car that climbs up the tracks when the railway is closed to passengers. You can follow the path down to the bungalow if you want to get a bit of exercise, and I just met a couple who'd come up on the tram and then they were going to make the walk all the way down. I think it's fairly easy if you're a walking person. And there they are, picking their way down the path. Full marks to the gentleman who told me he'd had a stroke last year and he was just recovering from it and had been paralysed down his left side, but he's trying to get back to walking, so full marks to him. Right, with the naked eye I can see Richard's tram is down at the bungalow stop, and it's going to track round here to my right all the way round the bottom edge of the mountain. So I'm going to sort of head off that way and see if we can sort of get some shots of the tram as it traverses the whole edge of the mountain. So come on, let's get a bit of walking done and get over there. This rocky viewpoint seems just the job. We'll also get to see the views that I couldn't get because I was on the right-hand side of the tram during the actual traverse of the mountain. So let's just enjoy that. We should be able to look down on the reservoir and across at more of the island and Scotland as well, across the water. Well, let's add ours to the cairn. Oh, this is steep. And here's the tram. And it's car number 4 with its military cargo of 1 major and probably a lot of other passengers too. Right, how quick can I go? Can we catch it somewhere else? I think the confident answer to that is no. It's just a race for the summit now between me and the tram. And I'm pleased to say that I got there first, which left me time to put the camera on this buffer stop.
Well, fancy meeting you here. What an incredible coincidence it is.
Lovely to see you.
Yes. Well, isn't this grand?
Yes, you can see a long way.
Well, you can see forever, yes. I mean, is that Anglesey over there, I think? Lake District, just over there. And of course, the other side was the Mountains of Mourne. As they say, if you can see the Mountains of Mourne, it's going to rain. If you can't see them, it's raining. But yeah, wonderful.
The Major takes a picture and he's keen to press on back to Laxey for his cup of tea at the cafe there before we will eventually continue our journey northbound to Ramsey. So we're straight back on board number 4. As we return down, let's have a word about prices. In 2025, a return ticket from Laxey to the summit would cost you £16, but Richard and I are using the island's Go Explore ticket, and we paid £51 for 5 days unlimited travel on all public and heritage transport. A very good deal indeed. Right, time for a little bit more technical stuff. These cars use a more traditional pantograph rather than the trolley pole of the Manx Electric Railway, and that's because it works much better in poor weather on the mountainside. And also, whilst you may think that climbing the mountain is a tough ask, actually getting down without the car running away is a bigger technical issue. And hence, when it was built, the line employed the fell system, where a third rail in the centre can be employed to provide additional braking. Now these days the cars have rheostatic braking, but the fell system is still there as a backup. This has been another lovely ride in the Isle of Man, and I can definitely recommend a short break on the island if you're a lover of heritage or indeed quirky transport. And here we are back at Laxey, the descent having taken about 25 minutes. So whilst Richard and I have a cup of tea whilst awaiting our onward travel to Ramsey, I'd like to thank you for joining us on this trip up the Snaefell Mountain Railway. Oh, and if you've not yet seen our trip from Douglas through to Ramsey, then it's right here. And so from Laxey on the Isle of Man, it's goodbye and thank you so much for watching.